is a part of our covenant. And so I just want to go over just a little bit now, but the main thing that came to me right as we're praying for Joyce and then just thinking about others that really need that healing touch, no word spoken by God is without power. And healing was spoken by God. And so it is not without, it has power in it simply because it is His Word. So when you think, and we talk about this a lot, when we think about time, we know that time determines our activity. If it's time to go to church, you go to church. If it's time to go to bed, you go to bed. If it's time to eat, which is a whole lot of the time, thank you, then you eat. If it's time to mow the yard, then you mow the yard. If it's time to go to school, then you go to school. So the time that it is determines our activity. And so in order to keep our lives in order, then our action must match the time that we're in. And here's what the Issachar people are saying in our life. And not only are the Issachar people that have that anointing to understand God's timing, we can know God's timing by what the Hebrew year is, what the Hebrew month is. And so according to all of that, we are in a fullness of time. Now, the farmers in the house know what the fullness of time is. When it's the fullness of time for the wheat, they got to go out there because there's a harvest, and they got to work that. And so you reap when it comes to fullness or fullness of time. It's harvest time. It's breakthrough time. It's a stage in that time frame. And so I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking, sometimes I feel like I'm just catching up with the time. And here, it's sort of like the revelation that Deanne has had. Okay, so these books weren't written first, and this book was written first, and it's all about a revelation. So I'm thinking about time, and I'm thinking, I feel like I'm always catching up, and I don't have enough time, and am I going to get it done, and is this going to happen, and we've got this conference coming up, and I've known for 2 months, and all of a sudden, here it is, it's next Friday, and I don't have time to get ready. Say time. So the scripture that came to my mind that just helped me to settle down, this is what Deanne always said, that her mom would say, you're all right, just settle down, you're all right. So I just settled down, I was okay when I read Isaiah 46, and here's what Isaiah 46 says. It says that the Lord declares the end from the beginning. The Lord declares the end from the beginning. Here's what that means. God never is trying to figure out what to do. I'm always trying to figure out what to do. I'm always trying to do, okay, I need to do this, and I need to do this. I need to do this first, and I need to get this done, and this is the day that I do this. And so God declares the end from the beginning, and basically what Deanne is saying is He lives on the inside of me. So I need to go to the end. What God does is He knows, He declares. He's already declared it. He's already decreed it. He's decreed the end from the beginning. So He's already declared the end. So He set us in time, and time is always moving towards His decree that He's already made. It's just like it's too much. You have to have a revelation to even understand how to get that applicable in your life. But here's what it is. Eventually time, because that's what we're set in, eventually time catches up with what God has already said. Yeah, eventually. Time catches up because we're put in time. He's already spoken my end from my beginning. I just want to have such a relationship with Him that He lets me in on what He's already decreed. I'm telling you, we can live that kind of life. I believe that Paul began to live that kind of life. That's how he got over everything that he did. He realized God decreed before the end from the beginning. So eventually time catches up with what God has already declared. And here's what a great man has said. Tim Sheets says it like this in so many words. He says, there are prophetic words that have been declared, the end before the beginning. There are prophetic words that have been declared over people, over cities, over nations, and they are about to intersect their moment. They are about to intersect their time. I tell you what, that made me so excited. That just takes the pressure off. Not that you don't plan, not that you don't get things straightened out, not that you don't do what you need to do in a certain time frame, but somehow or another, knowing that God's already declared the end from the beginning, and He's just backed up to walk it out with you and I. So when I'm thinking about things that need to be done, I'm thinking, well, God said, I've already declared the end, Sandy. Let's walk this out together. He entered my time span, my timeline to walk this out, and He already knows. When that happens, when you have that intersection of time, when you run into the word that's already been declared, here's what another man said. He said, the word of the Lord through the power of the Lord produces the will of the Lord. I'm out of the equation. It's not my word, it's not my power, and it's not my will. The word of the Lord through the power of the Lord produces the will of the Lord. So here's Mary. In Luke chapter 1, the angel comes to her. Now remember, God has already declared the end from the beginning. The Bible says that Jesus was slain before the foundations of the earth. So if Jesus was slain before the foundations of the earth, He also was born before the foundations of the earth. And so how does all of that work? And then He enters this earth realm, and He says to Mary, an angel says to Mary, well, you're going to have Jesus, and you're going to have God's Son. And she said, how is this going to be? I mean, she hears what the angel says. The angel makes this declaration that basically He's been with God. It says that He came from the presence of God, who declares the end from the beginning. And He says, you're going to have this Son, you're going to have the Son of God. And Mary said, how is this going to happen? And here's what He says, with God nothing is impossible. But if you look at that in the context of the Greek, here's what it says, no word from God is without power. That's what that means. No word from God, no word spoken by God is without power. That's a response that the angel gave Mary, who was about to birth into the earth the Son of God. So when it comes time for the breakthrough, when it comes time for the harvest, what we need to begin to do is say the word of the Lord, because no word spoken by God is without power. I can't make it happen. I don't want to make it happen. I don't want to spend the time trying to figure out we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how stuff is going to happen. No word spoken by God comes without power. So our part in the equation is that we would simply say what God has said. So check it out. Romans chapter 4. Paul wrote the book, the letter to the Roman church, and here's what he says about God in Romans chapter 4. It's one of my favorite chapters in that book, and it says, what God promised, He's able to perform. Somehow or another, this has got to get on the inside of us. We're living too fearful. We're living too, I don't know what's going on. I can't figure out anything. We're living, listen, all we need to do is agree with the Lord. Be it unto me. This is what Mary said. Be it unto me then. No word spoken by God is without power. Here's what she responds. Be it unto me then, according to your word. We need to know what God says, and we need to say that. Be it unto me, according to your word, because what He promised, He's able to perform. Isaiah 23, check it out. God is not a man that He should lie. If He said it, He will do it, and He will make it good. Say this with me. If He said it, He will do it and make it good. If He said it, He will do it and make it good. It goes on to say in Isaiah 55, I'm just talking about what God has said, because no word spoken by God is without power. It says, my words won't return to me void. My words will accomplish everything that it's set out to do. We got to get that on the inside of us. My word will accomplish what they are sent out to do. So over the last couple of days, I've been meditating on then if no word spoken by God is without power. Now listen, I got that down on the inside. No word spoken by God is without power. No word. You got to get it on the inside of you. You got to say it. No word spoken by God is without power. He's able to do it. If He said it, He'll make it good. So in the last couple of days, and I've been thinking about the words that God has released in the last 10 years of our life, particularly concerning this land that we live on. And so it is called the IN decade. That is, we're closing out the IN decade. You know that we observe the calendar, and so we're in 5779, and it started in 5770, and the Hebrew language, that numbers have definition, they have prophetic symbols to them. So you go 5700, may it be the year of, then you have 70, and that number 70 in Hebrew means to see, to look. And we're not just talking about in the natural, because Fanny Crosby could not see. You know what I'm saying? In the natural. But she saw a whole lot. And, saw angels descending. So 70 means to see and to look again and to come out of captivity. Listen, no word spoken by God is without power. This is spoken by God. This is the Hebrew. This is the Hebrew season that we are in. We are coming out of captivity, and I'm going to see what I could not see. I'm going to look until I can see into another realm so that I can see beyond. 70 means it's a supernatural season, an angelic activity season. It means empowerment, and it means release. So these 10 years, so I was thinking about these 10 years because I just want to get it on I want to know what God has said. I want to know what God has said, because no word spoken by God is without power. So I'm going to take us quickly through this timeline, not of everything, but just some key conferences and experiences that we had. So at the beginning of this IN season, we had a conference, and listen, it's prophetic. It was called Glory Advance. We didn't even really know what glory meant. Do you know what I'm saying? It was just a religious word, glory, advance. And so we had that. We did that in Wichita. And the upshot of all that, I thought about this, Deanne, is my definition of faith is that we believe in advance what only makes sense in reverse. You know what I'm saying? Now Abraham didn't get that luxury, but he's the father of our faith, and so we believe in advance what only makes sense. Some of this stuff that we're believing God for doesn't make sense until we get to this side of it, and then we look back. That's just the way God is. God has great faith. I've already declared the end from the beginning, Sandy. Walk it out. Believe in advance. I've already said it. What will make sense in reverse. Is anybody in this room? So we didn't know it then. We're just having a conference. We didn't know it then. But we began a 10-year journey that only makes sense actually in the last couple of days that I've been looking at these things. So check it out. In the last 10 minutes, we had this thing for 3 days. We started on Thursday. We went Friday. We went Saturday. In fact, we went on Sunday and did some things. But the last 10 minutes, now listen, I've been going over these transcripts because no word from God is without power. So the last 10 minutes of this 3-day conference, I was on top of a 20-foot ladder. Because I don't even know how we figured it out, but we knew that if we could get to a higher perspective, we could see more clearly. And so as a prophetic demonstration, we had this huge ladder. Did you bring it, Stephanie, or somebody brought it? And so there it was on this stage at Century 2. And somehow or another, I climbed to the top of that thing so I could see beyond, so that I could get a better perspective. I didn't know that's what 70 meant. I didn't even know we were in the IN season. But sometimes you're just living your life living in advance what only makes sense in reverse. And so I was thinking about that God just takes everything, because even though we may not know, He declares the end from the beginning. And so now I would say you're getting a higher perspective, because perspective is your reality, and I was above the snake line. Yeah, there you go. Okay, you'll get that later. Now, so on Chuck's way out of this car, he had to leave. Now, Chuck and Dutch were with us and some other people. And so Chuck had to leave on Saturday afternoon or whenever it was. And so he's coming across I'm on the ladder. And he's coming across the stage, and he walks past me, and he looks up, and he says this. When Sandy got on that ladder, now I forgot all about this, Deanne. When Sandy got on that ladder, all of a sudden I saw an angelic host whose head was way up in the kind of the rafters on this stage in this area. And he said this angel had a turban on its head, and the angel said, I did not remember 10 years ago that the angel said this, and neither did you, Deanne. I thought Chuck said it. Chuck said the angel said this to him. He said, I will cause a new thinking process to invade this land. So I engage the angels right now. God spoke the end from the beginning. No word from God is without power. That angel was with God, and he said, I'm going to invade the thinking process and in this land. I didn't know that till yesterday. No word from God. And God does use men and women to speak His word through. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But I always thought that Chuck said that. He said he had a turban on, and he said, I'll cause a new thinking process to invade this land. Then he said, now get ready. You will not think the same way and look at things, because we're higher, the same way from this day forth. You've got to think differently in this next season. That's how our IN season started. That was 57, 70, 2009. So in 2010, we went to a city and we called it Open the Gates. And we had Dutch and we had Robert Henderson. And before that, Dutch had told a story, and it wasn't a vision that a lady had. Now listen, no word spoken by God is without power. And this may be where I close it out, because I am fired up about this one right here. Dutch said that a young girl was on her way from Kansas City to Colorado Springs. This was back in 2007 to a conference he was having out there. And so she's on I-70. I-70! On I-70, the IN highway, I've been calling it now, with some of these people I've been hanging out with. It goes all the way across northern Kansas. So she's on I-70, left Kansas City, and she's driving across, and she needs some gas, and she stops at a place called Grainfield. It's just a little exit, and all it is a quick trip, and a little tiny town, and a big elevator, because it's Grainfield. Do you get it? And most of those little towns out there in western Kansas are all they have is a grain elevator. But so she stops in there, she gets gas, she goes in, and there's these two older gentlemen, and they're sitting in like a booth inside of this Quick Trip, and they look at her and she looks at them, and they say the angels are on the move. And that's all they said. And so she pays for her gas, and she walks out. And she gets to the car and she says, well, are they talking about the ball team, the Angels? Are they? And you're just trying to sort it out. And so she says to herself, well, I'm just going to go back in there, and I'm going to, what do you mean the angels are on the move? It was just kind of one of those deals, and you believe in advance what only makes sense in reverse. And so she goes in there, and there they are again, and so she doesn't say anything. They say the angels are on the move, and John Wimber is coming to cut the grass. And she walks out. Then she gets to Dutch's conference, or whatever it was round table, and gets there. And so then, it wasn't a vision, it was a real thing. So they get a word, and they know that it's the angels. The angels said the angels are on the move. And John Wimber, which the representation of John Wimber is that he was the very first one in America with what was called power evangelism, doing signs and wonders and miracles and evangelism, because miracles would happen, and then people would be harvested into the kingdom. And so John Wimber is coming for the harvest, coming to cut the grass. Get it? And so they got all that figured out, and they were all excited. And it happened on I-70 in Grainfield, Kansas. And so we did this conference out there, and Deanne and I are driving out on I-70, and I wasn't even thinking about it. I think Deanne was asleep, and so there's the sign, Grainfield. I'm telling you, I like to have an accident. I pulled off of that exit because I'm headed to Oakley, and I pull off that exit, and Deanne says, what do we do? I said, this is Grainfield. We got to go make declarations. The angels are on the move, and John Wimber's coming to cut the grass. And we got no word spoken by God is without power. And when you intersect with the moment, you got to say what God has said. So anyway, we go in there and we go down the main street, and there's a grocery store, and it's called Harvest Market, where the community comes at harvest. That's on the grocery store in a little town that's got 12 people. And so we take pictures and we do the deal. Then as we go over to where the angels were, the Quick Trip or whatever it was. And so we just go in there and we see the booth, and well, there they were. And so we go on. We go on to the meeting, and then Deanne and I start the meeting, and then Chuck or Dutch and Robert are going to do the meeting and open up the western gate and do the deal. And so I began to talk about this, and I said, and we pulled off in Grainfield and made the declarations. And then so Dutch gets up, and he says, well, how far are we away? And whatever it was like 20 miles or something. It wasn't very far. And so he said, well, Robert and I are going to go make the journey tonight, and we are going to make those, no word spoken by God is without power. And when there's an intersection, when there is a moment, when that becomes real for you, you say, here's what it says. It says, if I can just find somebody who will agree. Not agree on what you want, agree on the word of the Lord. I'll do anything they ask. Oh my gosh. And so there we had that. And then the next thing you know, that same year, that was sometime, I don't know, that was in 2010, that was 5770. Later on, we had a conference in Topeka called Reset the Time. So what we did is we redeemed the time, and we took the restraints off of the Holy Spirit that was loosed in 1901, which was called the beginning of the Pentecostal movement in America. And then we had a meeting every year of the IN season. So in 2011, on 11/11/11, we had a meeting, and wealth was unlocked, and Kansas was called a friend of God. And then in 2012, Kansas governmentally aligns with Israel. Along with in Levin, we aligned with and reconciled with Native America. And here's what Chuck said: you believe the prophet and you will prosper. He said, when the government of Kansas aligns with my native people and with Israel, you will know that a nation had shifted in its purposes toward God. So we just believe that. I didn't know. I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know this. I don't have to worry about it. I just have to believe it. No word spoken by God is without power. And then in 2013, we brought Dutch to Topeka, and he said it's time for the prayer movement to shift. Little did he know what it was going to happen in his life, and that was the birth of Give Me 15, and we went from an intercessory movement to a dimension of decree. And then we went, that was 13, and then 14 we went back to Topeka, and there was things that the man of God said to us, and we followed that as closely as we could. And then he said, I've got new revelation on this. And so we just went with the new revelation that the man of God said, and shifted some things. And then in 15, the pillars that he said, the iniquitous pillars that were holding up a glory tent that was supposed to come down on Kansas, those pillars came down. In 16, we set the canopy at the geographic center. Listen, every single year of the IN season, we were completing the word of the Lord that was given us. So we went to the Geographic Center. Then in 2017, we had a meeting called One Night, One Voice, and all of a sudden we've got air supremacy. Here's what Dutch said: Kansas will take control of the heavens and change stuff in the earth in this state. Hey, he said it's a manifestation of the ecclesia, a governmental group of people that will legislate. He said the window of breakthrough and the breakthrough portal are now open. He said that in 5777. He said then the next year, Wichita is going to fall under the power of God. I'm believing that for this weekend, that Wichita is going to fall under the power of God, and a sweeping move of healing will even follow all of the cities on the Arkansas River, and it goes right down through Wichita. And hello, the last time I went over there, because the bridge is out, the Arkansas River is right there. So I'm believing there's a sweeping move of healing right through Ark City. Then we get to 2019, which is this year, and I'm coming to a conference. Is there anybody out there? Yeah. I'm coming to a conference with the regional leaders, and Michael the archangel gets in my car. And he said, if you'll give me 21 days, I'll deal with everything that's holding back movement. And here's what we did. We just believed it. We had to believe in advance what now only makes sense in reverse. God began to do stuff. We did. He did. We're still walking in it. And God says, all of that you have done the last 10 years has brought you to 2019 in Wichita. Plow through it. So here's what he said. Okay, Sandy, here is the way it has been these last 10 years. The angels will cause new thinking process to invade your land. The angels are on the move. And a power evangelism has come, and harvest is here. Time is redeemed, and the restraints are off. Wealth is unlocked, and Kansas is a friend of God. Prayer has shifted from intercession to a new dimension of decree. Kansas is a covenant state. Kansas has caught up with its time. Kansas will ascend. Hey, ascend with me, and the harvest will be restored. The 7 spirits of God are coming back to Kansas. The canopy of glory is in place in the center of Kansas. Kansas will take control of the heavens, and it'll be manifest in the earth. Michael has dealt with what is holding back movement, and the hard pan will be plowed up this weekend that has held all of those seeds that have been sown not only 10 years ago, but hundreds of years ago. But a hard pan has come, and the men of God are going to come and plow up the hard pan to release the seed and release the harvest. Hey! You'll have to get the CD to get all of that. So not only are we believing God for our state, this is a regional meeting that we are hosting. So what I did is I know all these leaders all around this area, which would maybe be called the Heartland, not just Kansas. And so I said, send me your prophetic word. No word spoken by God is without power. And so I said, send me your prophetic words. Because we've got a team here, they're called gatekeepers. And I'm going to have them go to the gates of the city. And I'm going to have them release your prophetic words and our prophetic words. I tell you what, they all some of them sent numbers of prophetic words. So I just went through it. So check it out. No word spoken by God is without power. South Dakota, here's the word of the many words of the Lord. They'll overthrow the stronghold of America. Iowa will uproot political corruption. Colorado is a portrait of heaven. Arkansas will release deliverance to a nation. Missouri will be anointed with creative power and strength and revelation. Kansas is a seedbed of revival and will prophesy healing to the nation. No word spoken by God is without power. Amazing. Do you have something to add?
No, Sandy, what I wanted you to add a little addendum because when Robert came to Oakley and
Robert Henderson.
Yeah. And when they went together over to Grainfield and you didn't mention this, but from the
There's
very...
too much.
I
There's
know.
too much.
But this is so sweet. This
Okay.
little, and you know it, and I want you to tell it. And that is when, and all from the very beginning of these gatherings, somebody, some prophet was always speaking to our future that we were going to be a state of healing.
Yeah.
So Robert comes to Oakley at the beginning of this season and make mention of the fact of who his mentor had been.
Oh.
Oh.
So, yeah. So, of course, we didn't remember this either until I think it was Lisa who found the CDs or something. And because you forget this stuff. But I'm telling God, I don't want to forget this stuff anymore. No word spoken by you is without power. And so Lisa sent these CDs, and I listened to them. I said, well, you need to transcribe this. Anyway, down in there, they're getting ready. They're getting ready to go on their journey, their prayer journey to Grainfield. They're all excited. They're all pumped now. And so Robert said, well, I have my mentor in healing is John G. Lake. And he said, I've read all of his writings. You know, he's got this book that's this thick. And some other writings. He said, I've been mentored by him. So, and Dutch says, now it's just going to be me and Robert that are going to go over there. So anyway, so they leave after that meeting and they go over there. And so Robert says, and it's in the transcript because he's telling about it later, he said, while we're riding over there, he said, you know, in John G. Lake's writings, they got translated. And if you've read his book, you see that quite a bit. And there's the levitation and translation and germs put on John G. Lake's hand and in Africa. And then the germs just die on him, so he doesn't get any of that. And he's had some of the, I don't know if it's true to this day, but at the time when he was living, he had the most documented healings of anybody, in like 100,000 or something. But anyway, it was very cool that, yes, no word spoken by God is without power. And there's been, from the beginning of the IN season, and Barbara Winterville started it and said that there was healing in the land. And in fact, people would come to Kansas and be healed, and that cities of healing would pop up all over Kansas, and it just goes on and on. That's how our IN season, I might need to write that down. It started, and then here we have, still at the beginning of the IN season, the first year of the IN season, Robert is saying, John G., get in your mic, Robert was saying that his mentor in all of that was John G. Lake. And then what else did he say?
Well, the whole point of that is that John Wimber represented miracles of healing.
Well, right.
In the marketplace. Not just...
Yes.
He went beyond a congregation and took this life of God into the community, and that just offering a prayer and people were healed, and he was a modern day John G. Lake. So Robert comes to the very spot in the earth where that revelation is revealed. The angels are on the move and John Wimber, hello, modern day John G. Lake, coming. He was, John G. Lake was incredible in terms of innovative ways to reach people and to touch people. He's the one that organized the healing rooms. So what I just want to say is, now you could just say, well, what a coincidence. Or you could say that God is putting something in place with agreement of his will to bring it to pass.
No.
And I just want to say this, and then I'm done.
Okay.
there could be an argument that there aren't people who hear from God. Well, then once again, we can go back to the first of the service. You're going to have to throw away Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians. You're going to, because that is exactly how God operated to create our belief system. He used somebody who heard from God by revelation. He actually, nothing. I'm just saying that for the naysayers that God operates this way, you have built your entire belief system as a Christian on somebody that operated by the spirit of revelation of Jesus Christ. Woohoo! And besides all that, the prophecy was that God was going to release new ways of thinking. That's what that angel said to Chuck, who said it to Sandy when she's on the ladder. Now, I would venture to say, and I know some people that we think completely different than we used to think.
Yeah.
Completely different. And it's a lot better.
And after this weekend, I can actively agree with what the angels are on the move, and they're changing the way that I think. Because the way I think is the way I respond and how I receive revelation and how I get it.
And we're meeting in a John Wimber venue. That church.
Well, it used to be.
Well, I know that's
Vineyard.
the whole point. It was birthed in Wichita by the ministry of John Wimber.
Yeah.
He's going to cut the grass.
Totally.
He's still cutting the grass.
He's still cutting the grass. But we can even go further back, because in Isaiah 55 it says, just like the rain comes down and it waters the earth and then it evaporates and it goes back up, and there's this cycle, so shall my word be. And it won't return void, just like the water doesn't return void. It waters the earth and it goes back up and it comes back down. And it's like this, so shall my word that comes forth out of my mouth. And actually it's speaking about a prophet, comes forth out of the prophet's mouth, and it won't return void. It will accomplish what it has been sent out to do. No word spoken by God is without power. So I want us to meditate on that. Meditate on these things that I have said. I know Facebook Live has been on. Meditate on these things. Meditate even on your last 10 years. And then just say, no word spoken by God. And if you don't have a word spoken by God, then open up the Bible. Open up the Bible where Deanne has been referring to, and just pick something. God is all over the place. And so let's just lift our hands. Father, I thank you for what you have done. I think you declared the end from the beginning. And so I pray, God, that that'll change the way that we think, change the way that we respond, change the way that we look at things, that it'll bring us out of some kind of captivity, some kind of blindness, that it would bring us out of all of that. And so we agree with your word, Lord, that even all of these things that we have believed you for, they have come as seeds, and they may be covered over with some kind of hard, compacted dirt. But God, we are plowing it up through our word, through your word, through our worship. We are plowing it up this weekend in behalf of this entire region to see you glorified and to see your word manifested. And we say before you, God, we're not going to settle for anything less, because you said, no word spoken by me is without power. So it makes us want to throw down and worship you, God, for who you are and what you have done and what you are about to do. And we say that we love you and we honor you and bless you, God. And we bless all of those that are coming into our state and coming into the city of Wichita. That, God, it would be like you have set this thing up for the angels to be on the move and John Wimber coming to cut the grass. So we bless you and thank you already for what you're doing in Jesus' name.